Good morning, everyone. As per usual, when I see everybody outside, and I know that it's summer, it's a beautiful day. So today I want to do something I would say not unique but special. So this coming week, Tuesday, Monday night and Tuesday, is going to be the the 30th anniversary since the Rebbe's passing. And today I want to talk about some lessons that I've learned over the years from the Rebbe, and also kind of honor him and honor his teachings, and we'll see where it goes. The Rebbe, the Rebbe had an extraordinary ability to empower the individual. I think of myself and a lot of my friends. He took young and passionate students and inspired them to dedicate their lives to building a Jewish oasis in lands that were far from the homes that they came from, their families. These Shluchim, as we're called, committed themselves to this sacred mission without any formal training and no experience, very little experience. And you can look around the world and you'll see Jewish day schools, special needs services, Jewish summer camps, hubs for tourists. Today, Chabad affects all types of Jews in over 130 countries. And I wonder, how did, and myself included, but inexperienced youngsters have the self-confidence and the drive to venture to new lands, distant from friends and family? It's not the normal way that people do things. And to go somewhere and to build Jewish life and infrastructure very often from the ground up. And the answer to this lies with the person who sent them, the Rebbe. There's no question that since the Rebbe's passing in 1994, which, like I said, this Monday will make it 30 years, there were so many people who said that when the leader's gone, that's it, that the movement would dwindle. And I think even the biggest optimists didn't imagine such an exponential growth. At the time that the Rebbe passed away, there were 1,400 Chabad couples worldwide. Today, well over 6,000, and in more than 130 countries. And the number is just continuing to grow. Individuals across the spectrum are even more inspired by the Rebbe and his ideas, professors, politicians, the average person. So many people, to the point where the last Pew study on the Jewish community that happens once every 10 years showed that one of every three American Jews had an interaction with Chabad. So instead of going through some beautiful stories, I want to go through some of the philosophy. How do you create? And what I'm going to call this is the Rebbe's vision to perfect the world, what the Rebbe called God's garden. In 1951, it was the first yahrzeit, it was the first anniversary of the passing of his father-in-law, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, and he was the previous Rebbe. The Rebbe formally accepted the position of the leadership of the movement. There was a year that the Rebbe did not, there was no Rebbe. It was the year to the date of his father-in-law's passing. And when the Rebbe accepted the leadership, he opened it with a discourse. And he took a verse from the Song of Songs. It happened to be the verse that his father-in-law took during his last discourse. So it was like a continuation. And the verse from the Song of Songs says, God says, I have come to my garden. And in this discourse, the Rebbe describes the world as a beautiful garden and as a home where God wishes to reside. And while the Rebbe, then 48 years old, had witnessed firsthand the evils of humanity, having experienced the Bolshevik communism and the Nazis, his talk was filled. Think about this: 1951. It's 6 years after World War II. His talk is filled with tremendous optimism, highlighting the world's inherent beauty. He explained that God created our world with perfection, and that our material world is more divine and closer to God than the spiritual heavens. An example of this is the Rebbe's guidance on how to look at different elements of the Jewish community. For long centuries, and to a certain extent today in certain communities, there's a real disconnect between various factions of the community. And especially people who we call disengaged or opposed to Jewish life. And different leaders have had different versions of what to do with those who are disengaged and opposed to Jewish life. And the Rebbe said that they may appear completely disengaged. They may appear opposed to Jewish life, but beneath the surface, their hearts crave for a godly connection. Now, it seems so simple, and to us in this room, it seems so obvious, but it wasn't. And even to a certain extent, in certain communities, it still isn't. Another example of the Rebbe's worldview is his guidance on how to perceive setbacks in difficult situations. The Rebbe would say that that God only wishes to shower us with good. And if we're in a difficult position, it's obviously for our benefit. We may not realize it in the moment, but sooner or later, the sweetness will be revealed. Now, at the time when the Rebbe delivered that discourse in 1951, his optimistic view of the world as God's garden seemed closer to science fiction than reality. And even to his inherent followers, the Rebbe's idea of looking at this beautiful world through the lens of optimism seemed radical. So, again, think about the turmoil that we live in today and fighting the noise in the world. How do you fight the noise in the world with such a sense of optimism and hope? When, if you look around, everyone's saying, I don't even know what to think at this point. I don't think the Rebbe was in any different situation in 1951. The world was in turmoil and chaos, maybe to a certain extent, even more than now. Because there's food security, there's housing security for many people, for many more people than then. just as an example. So, where did the Rebbe's source of optimism? What shaped this world vision, and what can we learn from it? The Rebbe's positive perspective was not due to a naive a, a naivete of dark sides of the reality of the challenges that face humanity. The Rebbe knew exactly what was going on in the world. The Rebbe lived through waves of pogroms, a typhus epidemic, a refugee crisis, the killing fields of World War I, the rise of communism. He lived through it. His father was forced to exile and passed away under the communists. He lived through World War II, through the Holocaust. And besides his own suffering, the Rebbe was the recipient of hundreds of letters daily from people who were facing all kinds of hardships, people who wrote him seeking his counsel, seeking his blessing. I think, on the contrary, the Rebbe's optimism stemmed from seeing things beyond the veneer, probing deeper than what maybe the naked eye sees. He saw the godliness in everything. Everything else was just a facade covering the truth of reality. So, in the Rebbe's eyes, the world didn't require utter transformation. What was needed was to raise the innate divinity that the world already possessed and bring it to the surface. In the still waters beneath, there was a godliness that had to come up to the surface. Perfecting the world was not to be achieved through demolition and rebuilding, but through revealing the inherent nature that it had all along. And while we see the world as a rough and an ugly shell of reality, it's just a shell. Evil is klipa. It's just a shell. And within that shell, there's a beautiful fruit that awaits us. I think that this is probably the most important takeaway that I can give you today. That by adopting the Rebbe's positive outlook, we can be confident that no matter how thick the shell is, no matter how difficult our lives are, there's always a beautiful fruit. Oh, you can't see it because we have to take off the shell. It's May of 1940, the height of World War II. The German forces had rapidly advanced through Belgium and France using the Blitzkrieg tactics, causing a major crisis for the Allies. 338 Allied soldiers, comprising of the British, of the French, and Belgian troops, they're trapped in the beaches of Dunkirk in northern France, and they're surrounded by the German army. The situation seems dire. The soldiers are pinned against the English Channel with their backs to the sea and no means to escape. Recognizing this imminent disaster, Prime Minister Winston Churchill, he orders the British government to launch Operation Dynamo, a daring and unprecedented evacuation plan. The operation relied heavily on the little ships of Dunkirk, is what they called them, a fleet of civilian fishing boats, pleasure craft, lifeboats. And these small vessels, manned by both civilian volunteers and the military, played a crucial role in navigating the shallow waters to rescue the stranded soldiers, transporting them to larger ships and to safety in England. The success of this mission underscored the necessity of collective effort. It required the contributions of everyone, regardless of the size or the type of vessel. Ordinarily, small fishing boats would seem insignificant in the grand scale of wartime operations. But in this critical moment, every boat, every person mattered. The unified mission and the combined efforts of these ordinary people with their simple vessels were what made the seemingly impossible achievable. This heroic mission, conducted under constant threat of German air and ground attacks, preserved a significant portion of the Allied forces. And the successful evacuation not only saved countless lives, but it boosted the morale in Britain at a critical time. And ultimately, and I'm not alone in saying this, many historians will say this, that it changed the trajectory of the war. That the Dunkirk evacuation became a symbol of resilience, of collective effort, of demonstrating that a unified mission and small contributions of many people can achieve monumental success in the face of overwhelming odds. The Rebbe in 1951, back to that event, concluded his first discourse with a timely calling. He urged the people during his opening talk to be lamplighters. That was the word that he used, the lamplighters, to guide others to see reality for what it is. What is reality? Hashem's garden, God's garden. The Rebbe told us that we were to be God's gardeners and that it was in our hands to rid the world of its ugly facade and reveal its true colors. He taught that it was in the hands of each individual to contribute to building God's home, and that with dedication and perseverance, we would make it happen. The Rebbe encouraged us to search, to hunt every Jew with love as they were hunted with hate. The chief rabbi, Great Britain, the former chief rabbi, Jonathan Sachs, had a beautiful line. He said, as Hitler hunted the Jews in hate, the Rebbe hunted the Jews in love. The Rebbe spent long evenings at gatherings, urging his followers to go out to far-flung places and to bring a sense of Judaism there. He told his followers that you are needed for this critical work, emphasizing that every single person, Dunkirk, every person's contribution to the collective effort is key. The Rebbe didn't want to just accomplish this with a bunch of rabbis. The Rebbe understood that to do this, to change the world, to make the world look like God's garden, we needed all people of all backgrounds. That every single person should view themselves as a lamplighter, tasked with lighting up the world. This wasn't a duty that was reserved for rabbis, for great leaders, but a calling on each and every one of us to view our social circles, our circumstances, our talents as pointers in our unique and crucial part of this mission. The Rebbe often emphasized, actually, the impact that specifically somebody without the title rabbi can have. I've seen that so many times. The Rebbe once wrote a letter to the president of the state of Israel. The first president of the state of Israel, his name was Yitzchak ben Tzvi. And the Rebbe, in the letter, addresses the Mishnah's statement regarding Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, that he would honor the wealthy. And the Rebbe commented that many are mystified by this. How such a spiritual giant would hold material abundance in such high regard. Usually spirituality means poverty. Why do you take someone of material abundance and hold them of high regard? And the Rebbe continues in the letter that, however, it made sense. Because Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who was he? He was the one who composed the Mishnah, and later that led to the Talmud. He lived in a major time of transition for the Jewish people, a time from relative peace to exile and persecution. He understood the need to harness all the available resources to keep the Jewish spark alive. Everything was needed, every little boat. And the Rebbe says that according to the Baal Shem Tov's teachings, the Baal Shem Tov, who was the founder of the Hasidic movement, that everything in the world is governed by divine providence, especially communal matters. Hashem grants additional resources to the wealthy to fulfill their role in bringing about a world of good. And during these difficult times, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi honored the wealthy in order to mobilize their potential to protect Jewish values and to protect the Jewish traditions. And I think maybe the Rebbe looked to embody the ways of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, looking to use all avenues to save the Jews from assimilation, to instill Jewish pride in the generation. Like Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, the Rebbe felt the urgency to engage everyone he came in contact with, to recognize their influence, their potential, to contribute to the collective mission of strengthening Jewish life. In 2018, there was a Washington, D.C. councilman named Trayon White Sr. Go look it up. And he made headlines when he suggested in a Facebook video that a recent snowstorm was caused by the Rothschilds and a wealthy Jewish family through climate manipulation, is what he said. He said, when I was younger, I also blamed the Jewish people for all my problems and thought they were part of a conspiracy to control and to ruin my life. They told me what to do, what to eat, how to behave, who to be friends with, how to think, trying to influence my destiny. It turns out they were just trying to be good parents. Okay, bad joke. Throughout time, Jews have been accused of controlling the world. And it's funny because maybe we do attempt to at least control the world's narrative. We don't control the weather or the war in Ukraine, but I think that it's uniquely a Jewish idea to seek to uncover the truth of reality and to change the world for the better. I think there's no better example that I can give than this. Sorry. But I was gonna thought I would show you maybe this little video. It's just a minute and a half long, so don't get too excited. When I was a second year student, a sophomore at university, I came to 17, and eventually the moment came when I was ushered into the Rebbe's study. And then he did what no one else had done. He did a role. He started asking me questions. How many Jewish students in Cambridge? How many get involved in Jewish life? What are you doing to bring other people in? I had to come to become a Shluchim. I come to ask a few small questions, and all of a sudden, he was challenging me. So I did the English thing, the English can construct sentences like nobody else, They can construct complex excuses for doing nothing than anyone else on earth. I started the sentence, in the situation in which I find myself. He actually stopped me in mid-sentence. He says, nobody finds themselves in a situation. You put yourself in a situation. And if you put yourself in that situation, you put yourself in another situation. That moment changed my life. Here I was, a nobody from nowhere, and here was one of the greatest leaders in the Jewish world, challenging me not to accept the situation, but to change it. And that is when I realized what I've said many times since, that a good leader creates followers, but a great leader creates leaders. If you don't know who that was in the video, that was the former chief rabbi of the Great Britain, Sir Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. This is unbelievable to think about what this man, what Rabbi Jonathan Sacks accomplished during his lifetime. And he had no intention of becoming a rabbi. The chief rabbi of Great Britain walked into a meeting with the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he had no intention. It was not on his trajectory. How did the Rebbe succeed in imbuing that sense of mission in so many people? What was the Rebbe's secret of taking ordinary people and transforming them into leaders? An underlying theme throughout the Rebbe's guidance and responses was his attempt to expand people's self-perception. He aimed to help them view themselves as indispensable parts of something greater than themselves, inspiring them to recognize that within their own lives, within their own circumstances, within their own talent lies an opportunity and a responsibility to fulfill a unique purpose. Who ever heard of purpose? In this class, we know a lot about purpose because we talk about it. 100 years ago, who spoke about purpose? They were just worried about where the next meal was coming from. Providence orchestrates that that everyone ends up in the exact place that's uniquely meant for them. There are no spare pieces in this cosmic plan. Consider the distinctive confluence of matters, like family, like friends, like community, occupation, schooling, neighborhood. Just as in a well kept home, everything is in its proper place. Everything has a designated purpose. There aren't random objects lying around. And the same is true for the universe. The Rebbe said there's nothing and no one that is here by mistake. Everybody has a role that they and only they can fulfill. And that's what the Rebbe imparted to us, that our talents, that our skills are God telling us that we can make a difference in his world. If you're talented in art or music, that is God tasking you with your part of God's master plan. If you're gifted with a good pen, with oratory skills, that is God tasking you with your part in his master plan. If you possess great social skills and you're a people person, then God is pointing you to your purpose. Our God given talents are God telling us that he believes in us and that we have what it takes to fulfill the mission. And the Rebbe instilled within us the knowledge that we are God's agents on earth, that God chose us as his liaisons to reveal the inner beauty of the world, but by being cognizant that we are crucial stakeholders in the master plan, we can be confident that we have what it takes to make changes designed for you. The Talmud says that according to the strength of the camel, so is the load placed upon it. According to the strength of the camel, so is the load placed upon it. This knowledge gives us the confidence that we have what it takes to accomplish our mission, even what we deem impossible. It is this outlook of the Rebbe that inspired and continues to inspire so many young couples to embark on missions with minimal resources, to land in new towns and become community leaders and world-class educators. It is this perspective with which there are great Jewish centers built, and they become pillars of guidance for their communities, imparting the Rebbe's vision to everyone they come in contact with. The great Rabbi Adin Even Israel, Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz, you may have heard of him. He recently passed away. He said, just imagine that you are an eagle raised as a duck, and you think you're a duck, and you live like a duck, and then someone raises you, and you realize that you're an eagle, and you spread your wings and you soar up to heaven above everything. That is the special touch the Rebbe had. In the Moda Ani prayer, the beautiful prayer, for those of you who don't say it, it's just a couple of words that we say every morning when we wake up. It's the first thing we say in the morning, right when we open our eyes. We thank God for returning our souls and giving us a new day. And traditionally, this prayer is interpreted as expressing gratitude for God's trustworthiness, for God's dependability. But there's a profound Hasidic interpretation that teaches that this phrase, great is your faith, which it says in this prayer, refers not to God's trustworthiness, but to God's faith in us. That each morning, our soul is returned to this world by God. And by doing that, God demonstrates his confidence in our potential and our ability to fulfill our divine mission today. That God returning our soul each morning inspires us to strive beyond what we might believe possible, with the knowledge that we're entrusted with divine purpose, with divine capabilities. In 1956, a young woman wrote to the Rebbe. And in this letter, she expresses her dejection, her feelings of incompetence. She felt useless. She says that she was leading a non-productive lifestyle. And the Rebbe's response, I think, was both compassionate and transformative. He rejected her negative assessment, stating that her feelings of incompetence were not grounded in reality. This is what the Rebbe said. Your current state of mind is only temporary. The more effort you put in, the quicker it will change. I'll say that again. Your current state of mind is only temporary. The more effort you put in, the quicker it will change. The Rebbe emphasized that she had unique talents and the capacity to benefit both herself and society. It is absolutely clear, the Rebbe says, that you have the power and the talent to be of benefit not only to yourself, but to others as well. And he encouraged her to shift her focus from negative thoughts to recognizing her potential. The Rebbe advised her to take small, consistent steps towards a productive future, suggesting she continue her studies while also engaging in educational activities like organizing and leading youth groups. And the Rebbe concludes the letter with a powerful message. He says, consider well, there is so much to accomplish in our world, and each human carries so much potential, and we cannot afford to give up on even one capability or talent. It is the mission, the Rebbe says, of every single person to harness all the potential and talents they possess to improve their part of the world. So let me finish like this today. The Talmud states, with regards to Jacob, our forefather, Yaakov, it says Yaakov did not die. The Talmud asks, how is this possible? Was it for nothing that the eulogists eulogized, that the embalmers embalmed, and then the buriers buried? The Talmud answers so poetically, just as his descendants are alive, so too he is alive. And I think just like Jacob, like Yaakov, our forefather, the Rebbe's legacy lives on through us as we implement his teachings and his ideas. He defied all the odds and transcended the limitations of time. He did so through the marching orders that he left with us to perfect the world and influence those around us positively. So the Rebbe's passing didn't strip us of the mission that God entrusted us with, but we remain God's messengers to our world to uncover the godly truth lying behind the surface. This mission continues to cultivate a sense of divine mission within us. It empowers us and enables us to empower others. Tens of thousands of lamplighters, driven by the Rebbe's teachings, feel a part of the Rebbe's vision. And ultimately, through us, the Rebbe's mission is alive. And through the efforts of all of us, continuing his legacy 3 decades after his passing. I bless each and every one of you today that you should be able to, you should be able to internalize this idea, this gift. May the Rebbe's memory be for a blessing and be able to uplift each and every one of us.